Hi everyone, Sailor Moon here, and Sailor Mars here. And today we're going to talk about worship in Sailor Moon, something that a lot of folks in the Sailor Moon followership never talk about. Well, we're the only ones that talk about it. So in Sailor Moon, worship is talked about. It is shown. Let's not kid ourselves and say it's not, because it is. I mean, the first worship that we happen to uh, deal with is Sintunism, or whatever the English word, the way of the gods, with Rei Hino or Sailor Mars, with she working as a holy woman with her grandfather who works as a holy man for one of their worship house. And yes, it is, and yes, that is one of the many worships in Dawnland. But it's the first one that we know, the first one that the show shows us about. And a lot of folks out there might think, oh, well, yeah, but no big deal. Well, no big deal. It tends to be one of the main settings for Sailor Moon. We tend to have our meetings there, and the first two followings, and the third followings, it's doing all this learn work just to get into learn, which I don't understand what that's all about. Um, and later on is the meeting stead in the third following. The fifth following is there, but it is the first worship that Sailor Moon talks about. That then the show shows us about. Even though it doesn't, even though at the end of the day, it's one of those. And I know, whatever the way that gods is a worship that many folks in Dawnland do. Not everyone, but a lot of them do follow it. And forgive me if I don't understand every single thing about it. It has to do with forekin worship or something like that. That's all I know. The next one that we get into happens to be Christendom. And yes, the first time Christendom comes up is when, Molly meets up with a holy man who happens to have one, the rainbow hearse. It also shows up again when when Tiger Eye goes after a holy woman who he thinks has Pegasus in her dream. So it does play up. And also Sailor Mars goes to a learn hall, which is a worshipful learn hall. Isn't that true? And stuff. Oh yeah, it's true. You know, it is true. You know. Now, a lot of folks don't bring up worship in Sailor Moon. Is that in Deke and Cloverway, it's they kind of clean it or don't talk about it, but it is brought up a lot. You know, in the Viz and the TOEI offshoot, which not kid ourselves about that. For anyone who's ever watched those offshoots, it's there. After God and Jesus working for Sailor Moon heal this holy man who Athena's taken over him, he says, do you believe in God? Well, so do I. Go to your fellow man and your fellow woman. Well, and keep in mind, my grandfather and I are way of God worshippers, and our worship house one of the main settings of the Sailor Moon show. We have meetings there. Uh, Later on, getting into learning is sheet work is doing there. I only gold there once when I got my heart hearse taken and my dreams looked at. It does happen to show up again in the fifth following. Yes, a holy man is golden, having his rainbow hearse taken. A holy woman, Tiger Eye does go after a holy woman who he thinks Pegasus is in her dreams, but it shifts not to be. Um, so yeah, worship does play a thing in a Sailor Moon. Also, yeah, don't forget, because Molly went to see a holy man after Nephlite died. And also, let's not forget that Molly acts as God to help Sailor Moon, help Serena keep the earth well. So yeah, even though a lot of that stuff has been cleaned out or shifted in the Deacon Cloverway one, it's there in the TOEI and Viz one. And why so many folks in Sailor Moon followership don't talk about worship in Sailor Moon, I don't know. They just don't. You know? Um, they like to say, oh, it's about friendship and that's it. Well, it's more than about friendship. It's about other things. It's about overcoming your fears. It's about working as a team. You know, it's about entrusting in your skills and craft. It's also believing that God and Jesus have chosen you to do something, even though you might not think that you're worthy enough, but they do. So it's about more than just friend. It's more than only friendship. You're right, Sailor Mars. At the end of the day, folks don't bring worship up in Sailor Moon because the Deacon of Cloverway one didn't bring it up, but it is shown there. They may have shifted out the wording a bit and may have shifted the thing, but it's there. And for a lot of folks who like the TOEI offshoot or the Viz offshoot, know it's there. You know? Now I know there's going to be some folks saying, well, isn't there many other kinds of worship? There are. And I'm guessing, and I know there's going to be some folks out there wondering why Sailor Moon didn't have settings or folks from other kinds of worship. I don't know. Don't ask me. But I think they went with the two main worships that by the time Sailor Moon had come around were big. It doesn't mean the other worships weren't big. There may have been folks in Sailor Moon's world who worshipped those, were in those other kinds of worships too. We just never saw them or never met them. You know? And I know some folks out there are going to say what they're going to say, but God and Jesus also helped us, gave us this might to become sailor fighters, which it's not truly us, it's not our strength or might, it's the might that God and Jesus gave us, and they work through us and with us, and that we were chosen. And yes, you should know that I'm a Christendom by worship. Even though a lot of times a lot of folks will say, well, you were a half moon. Yeah, Deacon Cloverway and Pioneer and that it would shift out that. They would shift it. I mean it was around, but they'd shift it and make it a half moon. And I don't know about you, Ray, if what your worship is. Well, didn't I tell you it was the way of the gods? I mean, you go to my worship house for many years, you notice what my grandfather did and what I did. Well, I just thought that, yeah, you ran that, but I didn't think that was your worship. Yeah, well, my worship is the way of the gods. You know, I might go to a Christendom Learn, which was a worshipful learn hall. I was from the way of my worship house is the way of the gods, which that is the English word for that, you know. And I do forgive you, Sailor Moon, for not knowing enough about that worship. You know, it has to do with four kin worship, but we also worship God and Jesus too. Let's not forget about that. And at the end of the day, worship does play worship isn't in Sailor Moon. It's some folks out there just don't want to talk about it. They like to talk about everything else in the Sailor Moon world, but they don't like to talk about worship. And it's the only time we ever talk about it. So that's just our thoughts on it. Tell me what you think. You know, if you like this film, follow us over here at Sailor Moon for Life. That'll be our handle when it shows up later this month. Watch the last film we made yesterday over here when we were with Holy Fellow Nicholas. Soon we'll be having our film with Jesus the Healer next. I, Sailor Moon, I, Sailor Mars, and I'll see you later. Bye.